Good morning, everyone. It is February 9th, 2019. Luciferianism, a secular look at a destructive globalist belief system. This comes from Brandon Smith of thealtmarket.com. Now, before I get started, this is a lengthy article, and I'm going to go over all of it because it is very telling. And of course I will throw in my usual 2 pennies. Thank you for my new subs. I really appreciate it. If you agree with me, if you like what I say, please do give me a thumbs up. There's a PayPal link below, a Discord link, a link to my Facebook, Twitter, and Gmail. Let's get started. I feel like I forgot something there, but oh well. Over many years of investigating the mechanics of global events and the people behind them, I've become perhaps a little obsessed with one particular subject, the source and motivations of evil. This fascination does not stem from a simple morbid curiosity, but a strategic need to understand an enemy. Much like an exterminator needs to understand the behavior of cockroaches to be effective, I seek to understand the behavior and nature of organized evil. One very important fact that must first be made clear in people's minds is that evil does indeed exist. Establishment propaganda has spent immense time, effort, and capital attempting to condition society into believing that evil is nothing more than a social construct and opinion. Evil is, supposedly in the eye of the beholder, a product of religious conditioning. This is a falsehood. Just like concepts of beauty, concepts of evil are actually inherent in our psyches from birth. The eye of the beholder is irrelevant. 2 particular areas of human psychology supports this fact. First, as the work of Carl Jung, and by extension, anthropologists like Joseph Campbell, exposed, all human beings, no matter where in the world they are born, from the most isolated tribe in the Amazon to the largest metropolis in America, carry the same archetypal symbols in their psyche. That is to say, we all have the same psychological elements in our minds regardless of environment. The fact alone is so overwhelming to modern man that some people refuse to even acknowledge it as a possibility. We have been trained like lab rats to see only one path through the maze. We have been told over and over again that everything is relative, that each person is entirely a product of environment, and that we all start out empty as blank slates. The vicious attacks on Carl Jung by the establishment, including lies that he cooperated with the Nazis, tell me that Jung was very close to the mark. He had stumbled upon something very dangerous to the establishment, something that could derail their conditioning of the public. Second, the undeniable existence of the human conscience suggests that we are born with an understanding of duality, meaning, just as Jung discovered, our psyches contain inherent concepts of good and evil. that influence our decisions, and reactions. Jung referred to evil or psychologically destructive impulses as the personal shadow and the collective shadow. The vast majority of people have an intuitive relationship with good and evil. They feel anxiety when confronted with evil actions or thoughts, and they feel personal guilt when they know they have done something evil to other people. Some might call this a moral compass. I would refer to it as part of the soul or spirit. In any case, there is a contingent of people in the world that do not have it, a small percentage of the population that is born without a conscience, or that finds it easy to ignore conscience. We'll get to those people in a moment, but first we should probably define what evil is. Evil is first and foremost any action that seeks to destroy, exploit, or enslave in the name of personal gain or gratification. Unfortunately, evil actions are often misrepresented as advantageous for the group, thereby making them morally acceptable. The needs of the many supposedly outweigh the needs of the few, and thus evil is rationalized as a means to a positive end for the greater good. In most cases, however, destructive actions do not end up serving the interest of the majority and only end up giving more wealth and power to an elitist minority. This is not a coincidence. Evil begins with the denial of the existence of conscience, or the denial of the existence of choice. Each person is born with a capacity or freedom to choose. We can listen to conscience, or we can ignore it. We can do good, or we can do evil. Evil tells us the choice is relative, and that morality is relative. There is no difference between a good choice and a bad choice, or that the evil choice is the only choice. Beyond ignoring conscience, we must also define the motivation that drives evil. Psychology would suggest that destructive self-serving actions stem from an obsessive desire to obtain or control things we cannot or should not have. Interestingly, this is also what some religions teach us. But let's stick to a secular examination. As mentioned earlier, there is a group of people in the world who do not see good and evil the way most of us do. Their psyche functions in a completely different way, without the filter of conscience. These people exhibit the traits of narcissistic sociopaths. Full-blown, high-level narcissistic sociopaths represent around 1 to 5% of the total human population, and most of them are born, not made, by their environment. Also, 5 to 10% of people hold latent traits of either narcissism or sociopathy that generally only rise to the surface in an unstable crisis environment. I have written extensively on narcissistic sociopaths and the globalist establishment in numerous articles. I have also outlined how such people, contrary to popular belief, are not isolated from one another. They do, in fact, organize into groups for mutual gain. There is an ideology or system of belief that argues for the exact opposite of what conscience tells us is good, and that system is Luciferianism. In fact, Luciferianism appears to be the source influence for most existing destructive isms in our society today, including socialism and globalism. It is my theory that Luciferianism is a religion or cult designed by sociopathic narcissists for the benefit of sociopathic narcissists. It is sometimes difficult to identify the true sacraments behind Luciferianism because, for one, Luciferians refuse to admit that the system is a religion at all. They prefer to call it a philosophy or methodology, at least in public. The system also seems to encourage active disinformation in order to dissuade or mislead non-adherents. The historic term for this religious secrecy is occultism. I would call it elitism. There are some fundamental beliefs that Luciferians do openly admit to. First and foremost, the goal of Luciferianism is to attain godhood. That is to say, they believe that some human beings have the capacity to become gods through the accumulation of knowledge. I've written about the insanity of the goal of godhood in the past, outlining how quantum physics and Kurt Gödel incompleteness proof make total scientific and mathematical observation and understanding of the universe impossible. But mathematical reality does not stop Luciferian circles from destructively chasing that which they cannot have. By extension, scientific knowledge, not tempered by discipline, wisdom, or a moral compass, can lead to catastrophe. Material knowledge is invariably abused by those seeking godlike powers. And I'm going to give you an example of this catastrophe, or how it can lead to catastrophe. Back when they were testing atomic bombs, the scientists thought maybe it would ignite the atmosphere, and they did it anyway. And that's the lack of moral compass that can lead to catastrophe. The notion of self-worship is a core trait of sociopathic narcissists. Luciferianism just confides it as if it is a virtue. Another problem with the idea of becoming a god is that one inevitably develops a desire for followers and worshippers. What is a savior, after all, without a flock? But how does a human being gain a flock and become more a god? Through force or through trickery? Second, Luciferians claim they seek to elevate the power of the individual in general. In the minds of many, this doesn't sound like a negative at all. Even I have argued for the importance of individualism in the midst of societal controls. That said, any ideology can be taken to extremes. The pursuit of individual gratification can be pushed too far, to the point that the people around us begin to suffer. Because of the elitist nature of Luciferianism, they are not necessarily seeking the elevation of all individuals, just certain deserving individuals. There's a tendency to view non-adherents as inferior, stupid, and among many other things that should be sheared like sheep by those who are chasing a superior dream of personal godhood. This attitude can also be seen in the common actions of narcissistic sociopaths, who have no qualms about conning or exploiting people around them as resources, feeding off others like parasites. They treat this as an acceptable practice because they see themselves as special. They are destined to achieve more than the ignorant rabble. They are meant to do great things, and their image is meant to be cemented in the foundations of history. The elitism of Luciferianism is hardly hidden. Luciferians claim that they have no interest in converting other people. Instead, adherents have to be smart enough to come to the belief system on their own. However, their goal of influencing the public through social and political spheres is rather evident. Political gatekeepers, though not openly Luciferian, tend to let slip their affiliations at times. Saul Alinsky, a high-level leftist organizer and Democrat gatekeeper, praises the rebellious Lucifer in the personal acknowledgments of his political manual, Rules for Radicals, in which he says, in quotes, "Lest we forget at least an over-the-shoulder acknowledgement to the very first radical. From all our legends, mythology, and history, the first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did it so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom, Lucifer." Luciferianism is also prevalent in globalist institutions. For example, the UN seems to be highly involved in the ideology through groups like Elitist Trust, a publishing house founded by Alice Bailey, an avid promoter of Luciferianism, who also owned the Lucifer Publishing Company. Elitist Trust was originally headquartered at the UN building in New York, and still runs a private library of occult books out of the UN today. Former UN directors like Robert Mueller were tied closely with Elitist Trust and the work of Alice Bailey, and openly promoted Luciferianism. Mueller was central to the UN's global education policies for children and formed numerous branch agencies with the intent of global governance. You can read Robert Mueller's white papers on the formation of a global government on his website, Good Morning World. Luciferians approach global governance like they do everything else, with heavy propaganda spin. Mueller argues that the goal must be pitched to the public through the idea of protecting the earth. In other words, he believed environmentalism was the key to convincing the masses of the need for total centralization of power into the hands of globalist institutions. Luciferian ideas are sugar-coated in a host of flowery and noble-sounding motifs. But what are they really about? Some Luciferians adopt a Gnostic stance on the figure of the devil, and only claim to appreciate the concept as mythology rather than the devil existing as a literal force. Some Gnostic texts depict Satan as the good guy, and God as the bad guy. In the story of Genesis, God being a ruthless slave master, and the serpent as the liberator, bringing knowledge of the material world to mankind. Lucifer is represented as a kind of Prometheus, the Titan who stole fire from the gods and gave it to man. This Luciferian rhetoric, or this Lucifer as heroic savior narrative is very common. Manly P. Hall, 33rd degree Freemason and influential New Age writer, is quoted as saying in his collection of writings titled The All-Seeing Eye, in quotes, Lucifer represents the individual intellect and will which rebels against the domination of nature and attempts to maintain itself contrary to natural impulse. Lucifer is the form of Venus. Lucifer in the form of Venus is the morning star spoken of in Revelations, which is to be given to those who overcome the world. Okay, we don't have too much more to go here. One Luciferian model describes God as an archetypal concept only, a mythological comfort blanket that helps us to face the loneliness of existence. They do not believe a real God figure exists, though one wonders how they can reconcile the existence of inherent psychological archetypes with that notion. Where did archetypes come from if there is no creative design or intended meaning to humanity? Most discreet Luciferians sometimes argue that the mythological figure of Lucifer is separate from the Christian image of Satan. The name Lucifer is not mentioned directly in the Bible in reference to Satan, though the phrase morning star, the direct translation of the word Lucifer, is mentioned in reference to Satan. But this argument seems rather coy and disingenuous to me. For centuries, the term Lucifer has been synonymous with the devil in the public consciousness. Luciferians seem to be trying to separate themselves from the negative connotations associated with Satanism through a twisted form of wordplay and semantics. But why should they care? But why would they care? Unless, of course, they are seeking to influence public consciousness and they realize that it's hard to sell people on Satanism, so they want to put a different face on an old and ugly idea. Satanists often refer to Lucifer and Satan in the same breath as being the same figure. In this documentary, Anton LaVey, a well-known representative in Satanic and Luciferian circles, does exactly that. LaVey seems to be treated as an annoyance by the more marketing-conscious Luciferian groups. I suspect that his public bluntness about what Luciferian beliefs actually involve is seen as too honest. These people believe in secrecy and initiation. They don't like their darker side on display for the whole world to see and to judge. In direct antithesis to someone like Anton LaVey would be Michael Aquino, a military intelligence officer specializing in psychological warfare who was a member of LaVey's Satanic Church but left to start his own more marketable temple of Set. Aquino is best known for a tactical thesis on psychological warfare he wrote with General Paul Vallée, called From Psyop to Mind War. The thesis outlines the use of propaganda and other strategies to turn a target population against itself, to either destroy that population or control it more easily without ever having to use outright military force. Aquino's Mind More showcases the Luciferian belief in magic, but not magic in the way popular culture understands it. Luciferians believe in the power of magic words and symbols in the form of a psychological key phrase, or in the form of psychological key phrases and archetypes. That is to say, they have adopted the use of archetypal psychology, but where psychologists like Carl Jung used archetypal psychology to heal people with mental and emotional illnesses, Luciferians use archetypes to manipulate and control public thought. This is often done through popular culture and films. Truth Stream Media has produced an excellent documentary on this subject that I highly recommend, and I do too. It's a good documentary. There are many more obvious examples, such as Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, in which androids rebel against their slave master and eventually murder him. Then there is more subversive entertainment like Netflix series of Unfortunate Events, which starts out as a fun comedic children's tale but ends with a display of essentially every aspect of Luciferian belief, right down to elitism as a necessary practice, moral relativism, and unhelpful and controlling God figure surrounded by sycophants, and even a serpent carrying an apple containing the knowledge to save the protagonist from a horrible fate. The duplicity of Luciferianism alone should be enough to make people wary of its promises and arguments. Humanity has spent the better part of 2,000 years trying to remove the influence of secretive occult elitism from our political and social structures, yet these people are relentless in their desire for power. Regardless of the positive spin that Luciferians adopt for their ideology, the fruits of their activity speak much louder than propaganda. Through their efforts towards globalism, what I see is a cancerous desire for control over civilization and of every aspect of human thought. I also see a perversion of nature as they seek to obtain what they call godhood. Transhumanism and genetic tampering carry all the hallmarks of the Luciferian ideal. Regardless of one's religious affiliation, it is hard to find anything of value in their system. Everything about it is affront to inherent conscience. It can only become acceptable to the majority through deception. If you have to lie about the motives of your philosophy in order to get people to adopt your philosophy, then your philosophy must be dangerously incomplete or outright cataclysmic. More people than you think are this way. And it's not just Democrats. There's Republicans, too. And all you people, all you right-wing fanatics, would be good to remember this fact. Luciferianism is what drives their entire motivation, and if they have it their way, they will be able to kill most of the world's population. So, you decide. You decide. Fight or lay down. Till next time, kill the state before the state kills you.